Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Battle of the Brackets. Following on from, was it last month I think we did it, which was Best Christopher Nolan Moment, which was history in the making of Battle of the Brackets history, certainly. It was a clean sweep for me, which has brought me level pegging with George in terms of points. So it is all to play for. There will be a new champion on the leaderboard tonight, potentially. But this is, of course, we're arguing Best Comic Book Character Portrayal. And this is going to be one of our most interesting ones. I know we say that often, but I genuinely mean it this time. This is all to play for. We have some incredibly strong picks, which we're going to go through in just a second. But yeah, it's going to be a very intense one today, and a lot of clutching at straws, I think, from many of the arguments. But before we get into it, we are going to go through socials, and obviously I should introduce everyone first. 4 fighters for today, going from left to right. We've got Tate, George, me, of course, and Harry is returning. I always make the joke, boss music intensifies. He is a machine, so he is the one to watch. And our judge for tonight is Dave from TheLifeOrBrien. Link to his YouTube channel is in the description down below. But yeah, this is going to be fun. So over to the socials. We'll get all the boring stuff out the way first, and then we'll get on to the nitty-gritty.
So for the socials, if you'd like to go and follow us on Facebook, do so. It's Cinema Savvy, just type it in. If you want to go follow us on Twitter, then that is at cinema_savvy. And if you want to go and pick up a t-shirt, which sadly none of us are wearing tonight, then you can go to TeePublic, the link's in the description. They are really nice t-shirts, so please go do that. Please follow us on all of the social medias if you want to keep up to date with any of our videos. And also for this video, please comment down below on your thoughts for not Enola Holmes, for your pick. What do you think is going to win this bracket? We're going to show you the bracket in a second, but we'd like to know what is your favorite comic book character portrayal, whether it's film, whether it's TV. Just let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe as per usual. Now, moving on to George with the rules.
Yes, so if you guys are new to Battle of the Brackets, this is our flagship show. And once again, I have to apologise saying I didn't make a graphic for this to explain the rules. However, there will be fights as we'll bring the bracket very shortly. In round one, for round 1, 2, and 3, essentially up to the final, person A on the left will have 1 minute to make their point, make their argument, attack, defend, whatever means necessary. Then the next person will get 1 minute to make their point / argue whatever they want. Then there will be one 30-second rebuttal back to the first person and a second 30-second rebuttal back to the other. Then we have an argument, 1.5 minutes each, which is confirmed. Then it is up to Dave, the judge, alongside... Sorry, down that way. No, I can't do it yet. Dave is judging, so he will always cast a vote, as will the two that are not fighting. And every point has to be judged upon the argument itself. It doesn't matter if it's your favorite character from these comic book films. If they've not argued it well and someone else argued a character better you dislike, then unfortunately you do need to say other person deserves to go through based upon the argument, not the pick itself. They are the core rules. Now in the final, I believe it is 1.5 minutes for each opening point, followed by a 45-second rebuttal for each person. So there's a little bit more time. So that final is a lot harder than you think because you don't have that window you've been so used to fighting for such a while. That being said, it's time to bring the fighter profiles, and which is one of the fun things. I apologize, I've left the scoreboard at home, but I can go through those. So up first, we have Chris, who has fought 24 times and won 9. We are now joint. And his 4 choices for today is Superman. Now, the key thing with this is portrayal. So you might have picked a Batman or a Superman, but it has to be from the films they portray that character. So Chris is Superman, Christopher Reeve from his films. Not Heath Ledger, sorry, Mark Hamill's Joker. I'm so used to saying that. The Mark Hamill Joker is not just the animated series, but this does include his film work as well. Mask of Phantasm, Killing Joke. It just didn't fit when we were doing the graphic for it. So basically Mark Hamill's Joker. Third choice is Eric Draven from The Crow. Fourth choice is Michael Keaton's Batman. Next up is myself. My first, I've also won 9, fought 22. So the scoreboard, me and Chris are now joint. That's worth mentioning. And we have to say that first choice is J. Jonah Jameson from the Spider-Man trilogy. Second choice is Christian Bale's Batman. Third choice is Big Daddy from Kick-Ass. You may think it's Batman, but it's not. And the fourth choice is none other than the only Spider-Man that counts, Tobey Maguire. Now, we have Tate going up next. He has won 2 after playing 17. First choice is Iron Man. Not hard to guess what series that's from. Second choice is Rorschach from Watchmen. Third choice is Black Panther. So obviously you've got Black Panther plus also Civil War and the 2 Avengers films. And fourth choice is Scott Pilgrim from Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And we have returning, as Chris mentioned earlier, Harry with his amazing debut earlier this year. First choice is Wolverine from X-Men. Second choice is Homelander from The Boys. Now, we just spoke before we went live. If anyone watches The Boys at home, if you're not up to date, it's going to be season 1 only. We're not going to have any spoilers for season 2. So if you're not up to date, you do not need to worry. But there will be season 1 spoilers. And unfortunately, Chris falls upon that trap. And third choice is Deadpool from the X-Men films as well. And fourth choice is Heath Ledger's Joker. So they're the 4 people. And if it's already gone over your head, it doesn't matter. We have a lovely little bracket here that we're going to cut to now. So we've got the rounds. We've got Superman versus Joker, Batman v Rorschach, Iron Man versus Deadpool, Joker versus Spider-Man, J. Jonah versus Scott Pilgrim, Homelander versus Batman, Wolverine versus Big Daddy, and Black Panther versus The Crow. Now, we're going to go over this again later on, but that's the core graphic if you hadn't already seen it on Facebook or on Twitter the last couple of days. And that's me pretty much out of breath. I think I've covered everything. Up first, if we are all ready to prepare, if you guys at home are watching.
Oh, boy.
First up, it is Chris versus Harry, and it is Superman versus Heath Ledger's Joker, which is quite maybe the biggest match around one, I think we all said, and that was the first thing that was drawn. So
it's probably the biggest opening fight we've ever had.
This could be one worthy of the final. And this is our first fight. There is no warm up. This is straight into the deep end with this one, right into the lion's den. And I'm up first. Yay! Okay, let's see what we can do. Okay.
Right, so we have Dave judging, who will be on timer duty tonight as well. So we are looking forward to this. So Dave, when you're ready to do a countdown, Chris, your minute will be up first.
Okay, guys, good fair fight. Lots of arguments. Let's get into this. So we'll start your minute, Chris, in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, Superman is the most traditional, well-respected superhero in comic book history. 1978, they do a live-action film of Superman. Everything was riding on this casting. Everything had to be perfect. And quite thankfully, it was with the casting of Christopher Reeve as Superman. Yes, you did have some great things surrounding the film. You had great supporting cast. You had Margot Kidder as a fantastic Lois Lane. The music, the special effects for the time, all incredible. But you've got to get Superman right. And not just that, but Superman is a character with 2 sides to him. You have the all-American hero, truth, justice, freedom in the American way. But then you do have the mild-mannered Clark Kent as well. So you needed an actor with the caliber to believably play both sides of that character. And Christopher Reeve absolutely nails it, which in other portrayals I think has been very, very lacking. He has the physicality of Superman. He has the charm, the wit, the sly little smile, but he is also the bumbling and, mild-mannered reporter, as I said, at the Daily Planet. And he juggles all of those.
Minute up, my friend. Minute up, my friend. Okay, so next. 1 minute in 3, 2, 1, go.
The Joker is a character that's fundamentally based around chaos and mystery. There's so many backstories to the Joker, but his past is always murky at best. So there's been 1,000 different portrayals, but none to me stood out more than Heath Ledger. The Joker is a character that is designed to be the antithesis of Batman. So he is the chaos versus the order. And that is reflected so well in Heath Ledger, who is just the anarchist. That's his entire personality. The nuance that he brings to the role is utterly absurd. The little twitches, the details when he speaks, it's perfect. Like the way he looks, the way he smiles is just so menacing. It says something that when the Joker comes out of the elevator at the party, Michael Caine's supposed to have lines, but despite being such a veteran actor, he's momentarily so unnerved by Ledger that he's just simply frozen. And if an actor of that caliber is struggling, then what chance do we have? Like, Christopher Reeve, don't get me wrong, did a fantastic performance, but for the 1970s. And since then, cinema has moved on. Like you said, the special effects, all those things in the film were great.
And that is time, Harry.
Awesome. Are we going straight into it? So, okay, sorry. As a psychopath, nihilist, and terrorist, Heath Ledger does do a very good performance of that character. But as the Joker, as a comic book portrayal of the Joker, it is very lackluster. Really, his entire motive for the film is to corrupt Gotham and the people in it and assert himself as the highest crime boss in Gotham, which is very un-Joker-like. The main thing with Joker and what makes him interesting is his infatuation with Batman, which is only touched on very slightly and it's never focused on. And also he plays it in a very sort of calm, brooding and composed portrayal of the Joker. And he doesn't have any of the exuberance.
Chris, that's your 30-second rebuttal over. Harry, if you're ready to go into your 30-second rebuttal there, we shall go into it now.
Okay, yeah, so I strongly disagree with your idea that he's trying to cement himself as the main crime boss, because that's just not true. He doesn't care about the money, he doesn't care about the power, he just cares about corrupting Gotham. And I think that's definitely reflected by some of like the best Batman comics, like Killing Joke, which is all about how to make, if one bad day can push someone up to like insanity, and that's the entire point of the film, that's what it's building towards. Like you say he's calm and brooding. He is not calm and brooding. The energy, the psychopathy, the just mania that he brings to the role is
Harry, that is your time as well, my friend.
Give it to Harry.
I'm gonna come in there first. Chris, are you talking about the same Joker here?
I was talking about the same. I stand by that. I stand by my argument with that completely.
Well, I stand by Harry's rebuttal, which completely squashed your attack of Heath Ledger's Joker, and I will give my vote to Harry.
I'm going to jump in, Chris. Sorry, Harry, wipe the floor.
Yeah.
That's I can go into it, but you've kind of already said it too.
And you no longer need my response, but yeah, unfortunately, the argument for the Joker was just for me the better argument. To be honest, a little bit was Chris's start didn't get into Reeves for me enough. It was more about the music and things like that, so I thought that it took a little while to get there. But good arguments, both guys. But yeah, Harry's got mine. Would have had mine as well if required.
That's fine. Started pulling out the Killing Joke. I was like, it's all over. These guys specific comic book issues here. Like, I'm out. I'm done.
Right. So. Speaking of the Dark Knight, we have Christian Bale's Batman up next, up against Rorschach from Watchmen. This is going to be a fun one, isn't it, Tate? George versus Tate.
I mean, they're both basically the same character, aren't they? Really?
Yes.
Certainly in terms of voice.
Okay.
Okay, guys, you ready for this? Who's up first? Sorry,
George.
George. Okay, George, you are 1 minute for your argument on Batman in 3, 2, 1, go.
Now, one deniable advantage is that my guy's got a trilogy, which already puts Watchmen at a disadvantage, which I respect because Rorschach is a phenomenal character. But as Chris kind of rightly just pointed out, they're basically the same thing. And you do watch Watchmen, and Rorschach, he is great. But the problem with Watchmen is you just don't get enough of him. You watch that film, you want to see more of him. Instead, you're getting these boring alternative characters. You want more Rorschach, and he doesn't have that vibe. When you compare it to Batman, this isn't just Christian Bale's Batman. This isn't the Batman in real life. This is the Batman that changed cinema. Watchmen can't be made about Batman. We owe so much to these films, and especially in Batman Begins, the portrayal of this character by Christian Bale, the fact that we finally see the origin on screen, we see him trained, we see him learn under Ra's al Ghul, we see everything you ever needed from a Batman, and it all bigs up to that moment where over an hour into the film, they put him in this suit because they've done the rightful build-up for this origin film. You learn everything you need to know in that first one. It is a growing lesson. It is Bruce Wayne's film. Then you get to the Dark Knight. Dark Knight being maybe one of the most important films in cinema history at this point. And Batman takes a side seat. That's
George,
because
that's
he's
time for yours. There you are done, my friend. Tate, you're up next. Your minute will start in 3, 2, 1, go.
You say we don't see enough of Rorschach, and you wish you saw more of Rorschach. Do you want to know why you wish you saw more of Rorschach? Because he steals every single scene that he is on the screen. Whereas Bale's portrayal of Batman has scenes stolen from him by various different actors who are played in the other films that he's in. Like, Rorschach is that character where you immediately, all eyes are on him when he's talking about his demeanor and everything like that, when he's going over his kind of psychotic rants and everything like that. His entire detective process that Jackie Earle Haley is able to portray from this comic book character is absolutely fantastic. And these are two brooding characters. They're both detectives. However, if you look at the transformation, and I know that Bale did a huge transformation to get into the Batman thing. Have you seen photos of Jackie Earle Haley and what he looks like in this film and what he looks like outside of this film? It's so unbelievably different. He becomes the character. Bale has been characters in other films. This guy, Jackie Earle Haley, he is Rorschach. That is the only character he will be known for.
Tate.
He's Rorschach because... Oh, sorry.
Your rebuttal,
Time
yes, go.
He's Rorschach because no one else can name me some of the films he's done, bar maybe RoboCop. You look at Christian Bale, one of the best actors of this century, Oscar winner, everything, and he's able to fit in this role between them. You mentioned how you want more. You don't need more from him. He's got other actors are better around him. They bring the best out of him. Christian Bale steals that first one. It's not his fault. There's an Oscar winner that's in the follow-up. And you mentioned other people than Christian Bale. Keaton can't do the Christian Bale Batman. He can't fit into that realism mold. Anyone could have played Rorschach. It's a guy in a mask by a prison scene. Anyone could have played
That's
him.
it, rebuttal over, my friend. Tit, your rebuttal.
I dare to say the paranoia that comes with Rorschach and his demeanor, there's very few actors who could have slid into that role. We've had Batman since then. In fact, we've had Batman recast twice since then. We're all excited to see the Patterson portrayal. There were parts of the Batflick portrayal which we actually liked. Batman is a character which will always be regenerated, and we'll always see different kind of versions of that character and everything like that. And Bale has his own place in that history. Rorschach is Rorschach. When people look at Watchmen, whatever cut you watch, all eyes are always on the screen at that character because he is the most interesting one.
Your rebuttal.
That
It went really quick.
Yeah, it did.
that was a solid fight. That is difficult. It's a difficult argument as well. I'm going to sort of have to talk through this one, I think, because, Tate, I think your main argument was stronger. You lost me a bit in the rebuttal. It's a difficult one to argue because Watchmen has had one film adaptation, and you're talking about, Bale was just one of many. It's like, yeah, but it's specific portrayal that we're arguing and Bale's portrayal. So I thought you lost me a little bit on the rebuttal. But the one argument that I sort of latched onto the most was actually in Tate's main one, where he said that the character, maybe with exception to Batman Begins, the character does get overshadowed in some things. He's not always the focus. He's not always the primary. And that's the thing that I latched onto the most. But I don't know if that's specifically about the portrayal itself. But he did mention the physicality as well and offset that with Jackie Earle Haley. So I'm going to give this one to Tate, but it was a very, very close fight.
I think I'd probably have to say the same thing. Like, it was very close. I think I maybe would have liked a bit more talk about Bruce Wayne over Batman, because I think that's where Bale's strength lies. But both, very hard decision. I think Chris talking that through there's helped me to come to my conclusion as well, and I think I've got to give it to Tate.
And just to finish out that, I would have gone with that argument as well. I think it was just, again, it was that Rorschach being such a big character for the movie, and I think had George's argument been like Harry just said, more towards around the portrayal of Wayne, as this was more of it was Batman who was the focus on this one. I think that may have swayed it a little bit, but yeah, I'll with Tate on that one as well.
Okay, so I mean the Joker goes through and Batman goes out from the same movie. So we're on to our next one now. Third fight, we have Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man against Ryan Reynolds Deadpool. Tate, you're up next. You're fighting straight away, my friend.
Okay. Tate, you will be going in 3, 2, 1, go.
This is a career-defining performance by both of these characters. However, I feel that Tony Stark and Iron Man edges out Deadpool and Wade Wilson here. Robert Downey Jr. in this series of films was fantastic. From the word go, he started the entire universe. He was able to carry that on his shoulders just through his acting performance alone. He became the cocky billionaire, playboy, millionaire, philanthropist, whatever that line is. He became that character. He also became Iron Man the hero. He became the hero in the first film, and you see his character develop. You see him become more kind of aware of his teammates, aware of other people around him, and he becomes something completely different from the start. And it's so great that we're able to see that transformation across these films. He is Iron Man. You can't recast this character to anyone else, even if they do any more adaptations. Whenever you think of the MCU, he is one of possibly 2 first names that come on the list.
That is your time, Tate. You are done. Next argument, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
It's hard to argue against the fact that Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man because obviously he is. He's iconic. He started the MCU, but in a way he had the benefit of being able to start the MCU because no before the Iron Man, nobody cared about Iron Man. He was C-list at best. So Robert Downey Jr. could come in with his own portrayal, and it's not really comic accurate. And that's okay because it's entertaining, it's fun, and that's great. But then Ryan Reynolds had to come in, however many years down the line, at the peak of superhero mania, as one of the fan favorite characters, a character that he has campaigned for years to be made into a film, and he absolutely killed it. Like, the first Deadpool film is amazing, and the sequel, like, I was nervous going to the sequel, but it was fantastic. Like, he's the only reason that Deadpool exists as it does currently on screen. Because it is Ryan Reynolds, it's his personality, it's his charisma, on and off screen, he is Deadpool. And I think that it really brings such an energy to the life that I don't think Robert Downey Jr. brings to Iron Man.
That's time, Harry. You are out. You have your rebuttal, 30 seconds. Go.
No one cared about Iron Man until Robert Downey Jr. took on the role. I'm using the words that you just used there and kind of opening it up to the group. With Deadpool, he's already had an attempt at the character before. I know we're not arguing that iteration of the character, but he already had the basis of that didn't work. Let's go forward and do this as well. Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. came in with nothing. And yeah, he built it up. He built up the empire with his acting performances, with his great films. And we love them for it. That's my
your
argument
time.
done. Yeah.
Harry,
Again, sorry.
Go.
Again, I think it's hard to argue that he wasn't extremely successful, because he absolutely was. He was a huge draw to these films, but he wasn't the comic Iron Man. And we're talking about the portrayal of the comic book character. Deadpool in the comic books is exactly the same as Deadpool in the films. The fourth wall breaking, the comedy, the humor, the violence, it's all there. Talking about X-Men Origins Wolverine is a low blow, frankly, because that's not what we're talking about, and it's not really relevant. So talking about Ryan's performance in the more recent films, it's stunning. It's amazing.
That is your time, Harry. You are done, sir.
Oh, that was a good fight again. Wow, we've had solid fights now.
Yeah, we have.
I want to go first on this one, or you're stuck. I guess I am going to have to go first.
If someone's ready, take it, because to me that was the same argument. Which is really
I'm going to have to talk through this one again. Again, solid arguments all across the board. I thought Tate's rebuttal was more solid. You both gave into like really cool different avenues. You were saying that no one cared about Iron Man, but then he played it and it got people to care about him. But then Harry was saying that, there was immense pressure for Ryan Reynolds with a character that everyone already loved, and they had to, nail that as well. I think in terms of arguments, though, I think Harry covered the most bases with the character. He brought it back to the topic that we're talking about in terms of comic book portrayal of that character. You mentioned it where you said that Ryan Reynolds basically hits every single identity and factor of the Deadpool character in terms of the humor, the fourth wall breaking, and the violence. And obviously, I know that Tate, you're in an awkward position where you couldn't do a rebuttal in terms of the comic book portrayal, but that was what stuck out to me the most towards the end there. I think he just sort of crafted a more well-rounded argument in terms of all the different things that Ryan Reynolds brought to that role in terms of the portrayal. So I'm going to give it to Harry.
Dave?
I would have gone sorry, I didn't know you wanted to talk. Sorry, okay. To be honest, I was going the same way. Harry's argument that Deadpool's characterization, which is what this is about, being so close to the comic book that was literally put on screen. And I think that's kind of the strongest argument you can kind of give to it, that it was such a perfect representation of that. It's hard to kind of argue against that with another character. So for me, yeah, Deadpool went through for me.
It doesn't matter now, but I think I'd have given this to Tate, because I kept getting swung on the fact that what Robert Downey did for the role. The problem is it's the same character, it's the same argument, it's the same everything.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. It's a really hard argument. They're the same in real life, so I think I stuck with what lasted with me longer, and it was when Tate kind of mentioned I'm putting this towards the group. You've answered that no one cared about Iron Man until Robert Downey Jr. That edged it for me. That was too hard an argument to judge.
Yeah, that was a really close one.
So moving on, we go back to the Joker this time. We have Mark Hamill's Joker versus Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Oh boy, there's no let up on these.
There's no break, is there? Like,
yeah, we're all going to have sad nights, I think. We're all going to get broken one way or another. Chris, you have a minute on the clock and you're first.
Okay,
sir. You're good to go in 3, 2, 1.
Mark Hamill's Joker is the quintessential comic book portrayal in any kind of media. When you read a comic book and the Joker's in there, you read it in Mark Hamill's voice. This is a guy who's been playing this character since 1992. His most recent role he's played as the character is from 2018. He has appeared in TV shows. the film Mask of the Phantasm. He has been in video games, critically acclaimed video games. They always go back to him because they know, in terms of the fans, for the voice of the Joker, he is the Joker. He brings every single asset of that character in what was inherently a kid's show, and they still managed to go into, you know, the psychosis of the character, and it had the humor and it had the whimsical sort of cartoony side from the comic books, but it also still had that very hard edge, that very menacing edge to the character. And it is, of course, voice acting. Mark Hamill, you see him in the recording booth. It's not just the voice he's passively doing. He becomes so animated in that booth. He is almost playing like a live action Joker in that recording booth. He
Chris, that is your time, my friend. George, 3, 2, 1, go.
It's really hard to say anything bad about Mark Hamill's Joker. You mentioned it feels like he's playing him. Well, we got a live action one. He was the trickster in Flash, and there's a reason why no one talks about that much anymore. But as far as voice acting goes, he's phenomenal. It's so hard to compare. And yet we're comparing him to Tobey Maguire, who isn't a spitting image of his comic book iteration. But the difference is live action for this one. He was able to take the character of Peter Parker, the broken character, the person that can't afford to do what he wants to, that has to put responsibility as well as power. He has to follow that. He can't afford to go off and be like that. So each of these guys adapt that comic book persona so perfect. Whereas the disadvantage with Toby is what people are going to say is, oh, he's not young enough. Well, in 2002, you can't have a 16, 17-year-old play Spider-Man. The comic book movies aren't there yet. Can't have them animated either, so it's a very difficult argument to make with one another. However, when you think of Spider-Man, you think of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. He's the quintessential Spider-Man. When you think of Joker, there are just so many different versions, and that is not a fault with any of them bar Jared Leto. All of them are phenomenal.
My friend. Rebuttal, Chris, ready to go.
The problem isn't the age with Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, it is the character himself. Spider-Man is meant to be this funny, energetic, likable, charming character. He's using quippy one-liners left, right, and center. And Tobey Maguire is none of those things. When he's in the suit and we hear that voice, it is monotone, it is boring. He is wimpy, unlikable, and boring as a character. You take the suit and the webs and the crazy action out of the equation, and the Spider-Man you're left with Tobey Maguire is very lackluster. He is not that comic book portrayal. Ask anyone like who your favorite Joker is. Everyone will usually say
Chris,
Mark Hamill
Joker. Time. George?
So you mentioned take the webs, take the power, take this away. I'm sorry, that's the character of Spider-Man. Just because you can't do one little bit right doesn't make it perfect. If you want to take things away, let's take away the voice, because Mark Hamill's got no physicality of the Joker. It would never work. You mentioned, you want to talk about everyone's favorite Joker. Unfortunately, it's split. A lot of people like Nicholson, most modern day like Heath Ledger. Hamill is perfect. But to me, as an iteration for a portrayal, Tobey Maguire will have that down to the wire. Again, if it was voice acting, it'd be a voice actor, hire someone specifically for that, but it's not. He had to carry a live action trilogy, one of the most successful live action trilogies in comic book history. Mark Hamill's had about a dozen different versions.
I am taking a drink after that.
That's a hard one.
That's hard. This is the hardest one we've done. And
I know. Because we know that we both like each other's picks as well, so it's really, really tough.
I feel like there is no winners to this bracket, is there?
There's really not. There's a lot of broken hearts tonight. We take characters out that people really love, and here right now I'm taking out Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man for myself because I think Chris nailed it for me. And that again, it's that projection of the character on the screen. And the argument that he is who you go to think of as... And George, you kind of ruined it for me in your first argument where you said that's the character you think of when you think about Spider-Man. And it just, for me, that's not. Unfortunately, sorry. I can't help it. I love the other boy. Not Andrew Garfield. But yeah, so it was that. It's just the portrayal of this perfect rendition of Spider-Man, which I don't think we've kind of have yet. Maybe we'll get close in the Spider-Verse movie. The animated is probably as close as I think we've had the best portrayal of a Spider-Man. But yeah, and the fortune of this, I am going to give this over to Mark Hamill's Joker.
I am going to go next. I'm giving this one to George. The argument about the multiple Jokers and what you think of when you think of your favorite Joker. And he's right. I don't think of Mark Hamill. He isn't the first one on the list. And his portrayal, he wouldn't be able to do it live action. It is just a voice performance. It's a phenomenal, perfect voice performance, but you have to have the acting, like the on-screen physical ability to act as well to go with that. And Tobey Maguire brought that to the table as well. So I've got to give that one to George, which leaves it to Harry to split the difference.
I really appreciate that.
So glad I went first.
I tried to go first, but yeah, I don't know, so I'm just going to talk it out. Because the thing is, I thought Chris's argument was really strong, particularly his rebuttal was really, really strong until he brought up the idea of, when you think of the perfect Joker, everyone thinks of Mark Hamill. And again,
I didn't get to finish my sentence due to time. There was more to that. There
so,
was a continuation.
That's all I've got to go on, I'm afraid.
Them's the rules.
I know, such as it is.
That being said, I do think overall Chris's argument was stronger, sorry. And as a result, I'm going to give it to Chris. Sorry to like that, though.
It was hard. It was really hard to argue.
That was really hard. That was the hardest one so far.
Okay.
Right, Tobey Maguire goes
now we
out.
got the fight that I've been dreading the most.
This is the one that I'm most looking forward to. This one, this is it. This is
Right, we go back to the Sam Raimi trilogy with my pick of J. Jonah Jameson versus Tate's pick of Scott
It's
Pilgrim
another George versus Tate. Always these fucking battles.
When two
okay.
go to war. Okay,
So who is going first? Sorry,
I have a minute.
George is going first.
George. J. Jonah Jameson, sell us, my friend. Go.
Right, I'm sorry, but Scott Pilgrim just shouldn't be in this fucking bracket. Let's just get the obvious out of the way. He is by far the weakest link of this. And yes, his film is fine. It's a good Edgar Wright film. You think of Scott Pilgrim, you don't actually think of Scott Pilgrim. You think of Edgar Wright, then you think of the boyfriend, then you think of his girlfriend. He is the most boring character in all of this. Alas, we arrive on J. Jonah Jameson. When you want a burst of comedy, there is nothing better than go on YouTube and type in top 10 J. Jonah Jameson moments. He is a juggernaut. He is the perfect character. Talk about comic book accuracy. He is perfect. He nailed it. He naturally looks like him. He had the haircut. He had the cigar. He had the mustache. Everything was perfect in performance, in looks, in ability, and recurring across the trilogy. You never had too much of him. You never had too little of him. He always had you on the edge of your seat. Scott Pilgrim, I'm sorry. We should be talking about Chris Evans in that film. His eyebrows are better than bloody Scott Pilgrim was in that. Where do I continue? Oh, that's right. Sorry. When you did pick him, I did have the J. Jonah Jameson laugh, one of the biggest memes of the modern day culture. And that is something
that's time, my friend. You are done. Tate, 1 minute on Scott Pilgrim. Go.
You can go insulting like this role in this film and everything like that, but there is an awful lot of fans out there who absolutely adore this film and adore this performance above all else. He brings the subtlety of the character that is Scott Pilgrim to the screen. Like from the comic book, if you're talking about comic book accuracy, I'd say that Michael Cena's Sarah's portrayal is just as accurate in the same sense. Like he becomes the character. He has the little kind of witty bits. And as far as an acting performance and the ability to work with a director, you've mentioned Edgar Wright. To work on an Edgar Wright film, you need comedic timing. You need the ability to have that almost kind of quippy humor, that little bit of slapstick to go with it and everything like that. That's a physicality brought to the role, which your character just doesn't have. You talk about memes. Yeah, your character is a meme. Well done. It doesn't make it the best comic book character portrayal of all time. Having internet points doesn't equate to actual performance. And in this film, I personally believe that Scott Pilgrim is the better character performance between the two. Like, just in almost every element.
It's time, Tate. Yeah, Tate time. Yeah. Rebuttal. George, 30 seconds. Go.
Absolutely. Let's not talk about internet points. Let's get to the real meat of it. If they wanted to reboot Scott Pilgrim tomorrow, no one would give two shits. Tell me, why did J. Jonah Jameson have to come back as Spider-Man? Why were they too scared to recast him in The Amazing Spider-Man? Instead, they reverted him to an email. They brought him back in a different appearance because he set the only standard that will ever exist for that character. He is that character. You mentioned directors. Sam Raimi's a horror director, and yet we have a character bring comedy into it. Some of the funniest scenes of these films are him. He is the perfect epitome of that.
That's time, George.
The problem I have with your character portrayal is that there isn't enough of him in the film to have like a solid argument for him carrying any form of the film itself. Like Michael Cera's performance is throughout the entire film. He has to carry the entire film as the main character. Your character comes in every now and then, and it's sure, funny when he comes on screen, great, brilliant character portrayal. But if you're looking at the actual longevity of the character within the film itself, you've got the change, you've got the building of character that Scott Pilgrim has, which your character doesn't have even across the 4 films that he's now appeared in.
That is time, Tate.
Okay. I am going to give this one to George right off the bat. I think I could sense the passion, the fuel, the J.K. Simmons fuel in the fire. It was a amazing, well-rounded argument. Nailed everything in terms of appearance, in terms of the way that he portrayed it. And I think the one thing that stuck out to me the most, though, in comparison to the Scott Pilgrim argument was, maybe this is just maybe my bias towards the movie coming in, but when he says, you think of Edgar Wright, you think of the boyfriends and the girl in it, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Am I right in saying
Mary
that?
Elizabeth Winstead, yeah.
And then Scott Pilgrim is just kind of that beige character throughout the movie. So that was the part of the argument that I gravitated towards the most. And there was more fire behind George's argument. So I'm going to give it to George.
This hurts me, but I'm going to give it to Tate. Because I think George's initial argument focused far too much on Scott Pilgrim as a character and not on Michael Cera's portrayal of him. You talk about how Scott Pilgrim's a very boring character, and yeah, that's fair. But that's not the argument. The argument is which is the best portrayal, and I think you focus too much on how interesting J. Jonah Jameson is as a character as opposed to how well J.K. Simmons acted that role. So I'm going to give it to Tate.
Another tiebreaker.
Wish I'd gone first again. Right, okay, let's have a look through this, shall we? I thought it was both actually argued really well, and it's a tough one because both characters I really enjoy. I actually really, really adore Scott Pilgrim as a movie, and I also love the interpretation of J. Jonah Jameson in a trilogy of films I'm not overly fond of, but then you said how his character is not being able to be portrayed by anybody else, that as J. Jonah Jameson has to be, it seems to be they have to have him played by the same person. They can't go somewhere else. He played it so well, and that was a really good argument for that. The argument that to get an Edgar Wright that you have to have this comic time and you have to be looked upon as how well you're going to play that character. But okay, I am going to give this one to George, and I say I do love
George sweating there.
I know I love Scott Pilgrim. I just love the movie, but the argument that got me with George as well was where he said Scott Pilgrim doesn't not stand out as that main character for me in the film itself. Even when I watch that, he's still I prefer Knives over him as well, and the boyfriends. I think he's not the part that I would stand out much for me. So yeah, I'm going to have to give that to George just for the portrayal that he goes through as J. Jonah Jameson was just so on point.
I want to make a comment that I think George going into that didn't expect that much of a fight for this one.
I didn't. I'm not right. I didn't
to vote against J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, I didn't expect. I just expected to destroy him. That's why Sal.
George was like a rabid dog on that. You just need to yank the leash back. Okay, we'll move on to our next fight then. So I am up against Harry. Harry is going first on this one with Homelander from The Boys, and I am arguing with Michael Keaton as Batman. This should be an interesting one in that I haven't seen The Boys, so I'm about to have the whole show ruined for me. But I have.
I'll try and be as spoiler-free as possible.
I've watched clips. It's fine. We can do this. This is
okay,
fine.
Harry, if you're going first, your time will start in 3, 2, 1, go.
When you think about the best portrayals of a comic book character, often you don't actually think of the most accurate to the comic books. Often the best portrayals are the ones that elevate it that one step further. If I wanted a character that was just the same as the comic book, I'd just read the comic book. Anthony Starr as Homelander is so much better than the Homelander in the comic books. If anyone's read the Garth Ennis comic, don't. It's terrible. It's awful. However, Homelander in the show is so good. There's so much nuance, so much depth, so much range to him. He can go from a genuine terrifying psychopath to just this utterly destroyed vulnerable child in a matter of seconds. He can turn it off and on like that. He is mind-bogglingly excellent, and I don't understand how I'd never heard of him before The Boys, because his performance was just that compelling. Compare this to Keaton. He's great as Batman because he's solemn and inscrutable, I guess, but Batman's a very boring character, and there's not a lot you can do with it. The interest is on Wayne, and frankly, Keaton's Wayne is...
And that's time. Chris, you ready? Go.
Yep. Michael Keaton had an insurmountable challenge ahead of him. He was the guy that was the comedic actor. He was Mr. Mom, he was Beetlejuice and everything like that, and plagued by naysayers that he couldn't play the Caped Crusader himself. Out comes Batman 89. Now, bearing in mind, Batman that we'd seen on screen before that point was the 1966 Batman with Adam West, which was fine for what it was for the time. Keaton made the character be taken seriously, and Dark Witch was the Kickstarter for every Batman for the future. With, you know, your Christian Bales, whatever, you wouldn't have that without Michael Keaton's portrayal of that character, and he nails it. He's very, very difficult to tear anything apart about his character in that role, even so much for the fact that they're bringing his character back in the Flash film because they know that he's a fan favorite and people love that character. He nailed everything about that character at that time of the comics. It was the comics were moving darker and the films had to adapt. The look, the style, everything, the voice, he just nailed that character completely. His Bruce Wayne was perfectly serviceable for the plot in that film, but Batman is inherently the focus when he goes up against the Joker. So
and that's time. Rebuttal, Harry.
Okay. Yeah, so perfectly serviceable. That's always the word you want to hear when you talk about an amazing portrayal. Yes, you know what? He was perfectly serviceable. That's exactly what I want to hear. No, his Bruce Wayne was so just one note, so unnuanced. And that's arguably the same with his Batman. His Batman was the gravelly voiced, stone cold nothingness. Compared to like Nicholson, who gave an amazing performance in that film, he just comes across as such like a bland, wet fish that it's just hard to compare it, honestly.
That's time, Harry. Chris, your rebuttal begins.
We do see businessman's side of Bruce Wayne in Batman Returns, and he nails that. He is a solemn character because his parents were gunned down in an alleyway when he was 9 years old, and he's been carrying the weight of that. Homelander as a character, from what I've seen, as I said, I've only seen some clips, it is a pastiche on the recent Superman character, who itself is a very dark and miserable character who kills many people, so as a pastiche, it doesn't work. And in terms of his portrayal, he just, you know, it's very easy just to play a villainous kind of Superman-type character, which he does well, but that's inherently the character. I think that Michael Keaton, from his history of his work and showing what he can do better.
Okay, I want to jump in here quickly. This one goes to Harry. He absolutely nailed it on the opening argument, talking about just the range of Anthony Starr, like playing Homelander and stuff like that, and in comparison to Keaton's performances, both as Bruce Wayne and as Batman, just the argument was overwhelming, and he absolutely sealed it on the rebuttal as well. So, giving it to Harry. Sorry, Chris. Really difficult to argue against something that you haven't seen.
But I've seen clips. I've seen like a compilation of Homelander scenes. That's all I've seen.
It's really good. You need to watch The Boys.
I do need to watch it. It's on my list. I've just got through Cobra Kai. That'll probably be the next thing I take on. Awesome. Give me time.
Dave?
I think it's just, again, it's really tough to have the argument when you've not seen enough of the program, that the person or the character that you're arguing against, and that really is the only downfall of that. You could only argue really for Michael Keaton and not get around. But the when Harry spoke of the elevation of the character from the comic book, which he's right, the character isn't great in that, to how he's portrayed and the actor who portrays him, that for me stole the argument there. So I would give this to Harry as well.
I'm sorry, Chris. I know you love Keaton. I could say it, but Harry, I know you haven't seen The Boys, which is
that's fair.
Too hard to fight in. I think it's not your fault. It's more literally there was just Harry just had more to say. That's because I knew you couldn't attack. So it was Harry's victory, and Harry argued that well. And I must add in the serviceable.
Yeah, I know that was it.
That's maybe the most powerful put down I've ever heard on Keaton. And Chris is going to be fuming when I start bringing that up in the future. I'm joking. But
it is what it is.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's totally fair.
Right. So I don't think that was an upset. That's what makes this crazy. If you've seen The Boys, if you have, comment. But I don't think that's an upset if you've seen The Boys. But next up in round one, Harry, are you prepared to go again? Because we have Hugh Jackman's The Wolverine up against Nicolas Cage's Big Daddy. The most ridiculous double pairing there is. Harry, you are going to be first on the clock. I'm excited.
Harry, sell us on Hugh Jackman in 3, 2, 1, and go.
I mean, it's Hugh Jackman. The man is Wolverine. He is the beginning and the end of that character. Like, the fact that this tall, skinny Australian somehow manages to convincingly portray this short, jacked Canadian so well that he almost single-handedly started the superhero film craze is just a testament to his portrayal. Especially how he develops over the role. Yeah, he starts off as basically this skinny twink in the first film, but by the time he gets to the last film, if you see the Wolverine, the dude is jacked. The commitment he puts into that role is absurd. The range of emotions that he's done with that film, from the cocky little like twerp from the start and to the ridiculously emotionally driven character in in Logan. Like, I mean, come on, it is just amazing what he does. Whereas Nicolas Cage's Big Daddy, like, he's a joke. Like, oh, come on, I know that Kick-Ass is a satirical film, but come on now, there has to be some level of seriousness to it. I know it's meant to have levity, but he's just such a goofy character that it feels so out of place.
And that's
Campiness
time.
is-
Chris, your minute.
Whoa,
No, it's me.
No, sorry, George, on Big Daddy. Sorry.
This is not me. This is not... Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Sorry, Chris, I can't believe I nearly blamed you for that. I'm not apologising. I mean, no reasons. George, right, okay, your minute, go.
You mentioned he's camping this, and he's not. I'm sorry, but when you see him burning to death in front of his 10-year-old daughter, and he's sitting there giving her instructions, his final will, that's more powerful than any scene Hugh Jackman had in how many X-Men films? Like 9 or 10? You've got so much to pick from. Big Daddy's got like 20 minutes of screen time versus sort of 18 years for the other guy. Look at Big Daddy, it's such a select performance. Have you seen the portrayal of Kick-Ass in the comics? Sorry, Big Daddy. It's just a bloke in a mask and a suit, and it's awful. And the comic's fine, but Big Daddy's not a good thing. Enter Nicolas Cage's I Want to Parody Adam West. And that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with satirical. There's nothing with this parody. And he made a badass version of that crazy Batman. His warehouse scene when he murders everyone's one of the best action scenes these films had. Is up to scratch with these $200-300 million budget films. And this is a very low budget one. This had no right to be good. Yet this is iconic as it can get. We're not going to debate who can play this again because it's not that kind of film.
And
however,
rebuttal.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, okay. So in the original comic book, spoilers for anyone who hasn't read it, basically his whole backstory of him being an ex-cop with a murdered wife is revealed to be a lie, and he's just a comic book nerd that kidnapped and brainwashed his daughter, which is a way more interesting and compelling sort of satire of the superhero drama than him actually just being a jealous ex-cop. And so I think he was actually a downgrading character. And you're talking about that the emotional thing was that was more emotional than anything that Hugh Jackman did. Have you seen Logan? Have you seen some of his performances? The end of it is heart-wrenching to see a character say goodbye.
George, your rebuttal.
It's only a sad goodbye because he's been around for 18 years. If he did it after X-Men 3, no one would have cared. Did it after Wolverine, X-Men Origins, no one would have cared. There's been bad things in there, and Hugh Jackman's been a good thing of those bad things, but he only got that decency because Deadpool works, they can make it rated R. People only got hyped because it was rated R. This film was already rated R, and I disagree massively. The comics weren't better. It wouldn't have worked. Kidnapping his daughter, all that changed. The comics didn't work. He did his own take on it and made it better than what it was, and that's a key thing in my eyes. Wolverine has great moments in the comic, but X-Men sacrificed themselves when they made him the protagonist.
I am not going first, so whoever wants to go first.
That was hard.
I defer.
That was a crazy, crazy level of argument for Big Daddy from Kick-Ass.
I'm
Before
impressed.
George, before George spoke, I was ready just to literally kind of just wistfully look around while you were talking and ready just to hand this off straight away. But actually, you made some really valid arguments on his character. I love that you brought up his portrayal was basically him doing Adam West, as in if he was that different version of the character, which is a really nice moment. However, Harry had Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and he's right in the development of that character from when he comes into screen on X-Men in that cage to when we see him leave with that big hole in his chest at the end of Logan. The range of emotion and things and the range of his character changes that Harry went over, for me, it's such a good portrayal. I can't argue against it. And Harry for me on that one.
We just had a comment I just want to bring up really quickly. I think he meant to say ever here.
Ever.
If I ever need a lawyer, I'm hiring George or Harry. That's the best comment.
I want to go next because when we go into these brackets, we have this draft system I want to talk about. And the top of my board was going to be Wolverine. And Harry had the first pick and ended up taking Wolverine for his first pick instead. And Big Daddy wasn't even on my list. And I absolutely adore Big Daddy's as a character performance by Nick Cage and everything like that.
Don't do this to me, Tate.
I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm sending this to a tiebreaker because George's argument.
Yes.
George
hate you, Tate. I hate you.
George just brushed off all of the arguments against Big Daddy as if it was nothing, and counteracted back and talked about Wolverine as if he was a character who wasn't around for the last 18 years and stuff like that. And we're going based on argument here. If we're going based on character, I'm picking Wolverine every time. If we're going based on argument, I'm picking George on this one.
Chris?
Can I just say that he was my third choice as well, above Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh my god. I feel like I've got like a devil and angel on my shoulder right now. It's like inherently the person I know I want to put through, but the person I feel like I have to put through.
It's one of those on your shoulder sitting there going, child!
Based on the arguments. I feel like the one about the whole I prefer it if it's a kidnapped daughter, I prefer if it's that way, that's just purely subjective. So I'm taking that out of the equation and just sort of going from the rest of the arguments. Wolverine, Hugh Jackman definitely does have time on his side by playing the character for almost 2 decades. So there is that. But I am kind of with Tate that George did, very well brush off most of the arguments that were thrown. Like there was a barrage of arguments towards Big Daddy, and that is no easy fight. That might have been one of the toughest fights on the entire board for tonight. And George was steadfast. He held his ground, and he did sort of deflect most of them, I thought. So, and the main one as well that he mentioned, the fact that he maybe has 20 minutes of screen time, and he did compare it in that short amount of time that he does have that very, that strong impact with his portrayal of that character. Very interesting take, doing like the pastiche of Adam West. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to give it to George as Big Daddy, and both were incredibly well fought.
I quit. I'm out.
Come back. You're still in the game. I don't know how, but that was mad.
We've ever had.
That's awesome.
This is what I mean. Wolverine should go through. He absolutely should go through. But I feel in terms of the arguments for tonight, we mentioned this at the beginning, I just feel like Big Daddy had this ever so slightly stronger argument.
I'm shocked too. Wolverine was on all of our lists. I'm going to thank you guys, and that's like me done for the night. Like I've peaked now. I don't care.
I feel like I've let you down.
Hugh Jackman's watching this, like, right, what are they going to talk well about? And he's like, Nicholas fucking Cage.
That's the thing, man. Nicolas Cage, that's who suck him out.
Has Hugh Jackman won an Oscar? No. Has Nicolas Cage? Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
But what's Hugh Jackman in The Wicker Man?
I can't wait to see George's next time he gets around to an argument about Big Daddy again with all his new points that he has to raise.
But before we get to that, we're going to find out who Big Daddy has in the next round, which leads us on to the final match of round 1. Tate and Black Panther versus Chris and the Crow.
Tate, now I want you to be the bigger man in this argument, okay? I'm just going to say, if you're going to go there, I'm going to go there too. So I'm just saying.
I feel like if we just blanket it off at the start, it's fine.
Okay.
Then.
Anyone watching at home, if things get tough, remember this is based on characters, not actors. Just on the off chance things are said, nothing that you think are bad will be said about recent events. That's all I'm going to politely say.
Yeah.
But remember, guys, this is not for you two. For people at home, this show is arguments. We say stuff we don't believe.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, and who's Tate? You are first. Your minute. Go, my friend.
Well, sadly, we have to address it immediately because these two characters have sadly passed away. One on set during their role, and one afterwards, after their role, and wasn't able to see through a completion of the series of films they started. I want to talk about Chadwick Boseman here for a second because when he was brought onto this film, they were looking for someone to play the Black Panther, one of the most iconic, black superheroes of all time. Some big shoes to fill as far as representing your race, representing your community, and everything like that. And Chadwick Boseman came in, and he was the king. Long live the king. He was that role. He brought the kindness that comes with him. He brought the physicality to the role. He brought everything. His acting talent in this film, down to his accurate accent to the areas of which Africa, Wakanda is meant to be represented in. He was everything for this. He overshadowed characters in Civil War with his introduction. He was fantastic.
And that's time. Chris, your minute on the Crow.
You mentioned Long Live the King there, and that was kind of where I was going to go with my argument in terms of he's good in the role, but in terms of his main sort of flagship film, Black Panther, I thought as a film it was very lackluster in terms of the writing for the character. It just wasn't there. It didn't give me he had more impact in like a cameo role in an earlier Marvel film than he did in his main one, and it was pretty much like another knockoff of The Lion King, that reclaiming the throne. You know, someone usurped him, has to reclaim the throne of Wakanda. Long live the king! Indeed, it was Lion King all over again, and I just don't think the writing was there for the character to make him have that huge impact. And if you're talking about sort of representation, everything like that, even in terms of superhero history, there have been many films before. Black Panther is in fact the 10th black-led superhero film that has been made. You know, one of the ones that kickstarted off was the Blade trilogy, for example. You know, almost 2 decades before that point. So I feel like that needs to be taken out of the equation. Brandon Lee with The Crow, they have made 3 sequels and none have been able to live up to that. The impact that Brandon Lee brought to that role of humanity.
Rebuttal. Harry.
Yes. Oh, Tate.
Sorry. Just doing so
go
well.
On, yeah, I was going to say, you go on talking about Blade and stuff like that. I wasn't talking about Blade. I was talking about bringing a black character to the MCU, a black hero who could be the leader of a country to represent his kind of image as a king and everything like that. And he brought that in this film amongst other heavyweights who he was like fighting up against and stuff. Not only that, he is the character. He became the role. Brandon Lee had an amazing career ahead of him. We don't know what he would have done in his other projects. But this is his legacy, and his legacy is going to stand a lot stronger than Brandon Lee's.
That's time.
To say.
Brandon Lee's legacy is this film. They have never been able to recapture that magic and the humanity and the range of emotions. It's a very simple story, a revenge story, but Brandon Lee brings so much emotion. He has the intensity, that sort of murderous kind of quality, that vengeful quality, but there's the quieter moments, the more reflective side. And you talk about sort of black representation in the MCU. Are we forgetting Nick Fury, Falcon, War Machine? It's nothing new. It really isn't anything new. So that whole argument there is completely moot to me. In terms of a portrayal of a comic book character and the range of emotions, I feel Brandon Lee did it.
I'm going to go first, if that's okay.
I feel bad.
It has this one.
Okay.
I think, Chris, you focused way too much on the film Black Panther and not the portrayal of Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. For what it's worth, I agree with you. But it's not really pertinent. As well, in this, you didn't really, because you spent so long talking about the film Black Panther, you spoke very, very little about Brandon Lee and The Crow. Like, I haven't seen that film. I still don't really know what it's about based on your description of it, or what makes it special, or what Brandon Lee did that was good in it. So, yeah, definitely Tate on this one.
I'm going to go with Tate as well. And to be honest, one of my sole arguments is exactly what Harry's kind of said there. You didn't kind of get onto The Crow himself until really your rebuttal.
Time management is very difficult on these things.
Yeah, I absolutely know. Yeah. And it took a while to get to actually talk about Brandon, and then it was the trying to brush off the argument of how it wasn't that big a thing for him, Chadwick Boseman, to be Black Panther. And he's right, he was the king. That had such a cultural phenomenon against it, that film hit people so hard. Black people were just loving like the way his portrayal, and that they'd never seen this represented on screen, although there had been other black characters and other black people. This was the first time a king, someone regal, someone of that high authority had been portrayed that way, and I think that's a really special thing for that character to have as well. So I thought that was best. But yeah, I'm going to give this one to Black Panther.
That's fair.
I would have also given it to Tate. I think, Chris, you argued well, but in terms of trying to go against Black Panther, but I don't think there was enough on Brandon Lee's The Crow. It's one of the most difficult arguments of the night, trying to listen to both of you, because it is a very tough argument for both people to make.
I think the saddest thing from that argument was the fact that Chris said The Lion King instead of Hamlet.
No,
you said Long Live the King, and
they're all the same. Everything basically, even Shakespeare probably did something and saw something like good or like I want. Who knows? But so that would have been a straight swoop for Black Panther. So that is the end of round one, folks. If you're watching at home.
Dramatic pause or frozen.
If you're watching at home, come on, please.
Yes, what? Tell us, George, what?
It was also exciting.
I'll say, comment, was I building up to the biggest upset so far? Which is, I still don't know. I know we are right. It is Big Daddy and Wolverine. Let's be honest. However, we have the boundaries ready for round 2. Not the boundaries, sorry, the bracket ready. So we have Harry and the Joker versus Tate and Rorschach. We have Harry and Deadpool versus Chris and Mark Hamill's Joker. Myself and Jenna Jameson versus Harry and Homelander. And someone actually beat Harry, so I'm going to take credit already. Big Daddy versus Tate and Black Panther. That is going to be one hell of an argument, which I'm scared for already. So Harry and Heath Ledger's Joker. We might have a Joker semi-final. Interesting. So Harry, I'm going to order this in a minute against Tate. Give me 1 sec, guys. If you really want, I can do this a nice Sky Sports scrolling thing. So Harry versus Tate against Rorschach. There we go. So everyone prepare yourselves. Harry, you have a minute on the clock. You're going to be at first.
Indeed.
David,
and when you're ready, go ahead.
Okay. So Heath Ledger's Joker is an iconic character. When you talk about the Joker, like we said earlier, Chris mentioned that when you talk about a Joker, you think of Mark Hamill. I don't. I think of Heath Ledger. And I think that's the case with a lot of people of our generation. Through no fault of Jackie Earle, Rorschach is an interesting character, but it's not an iconic character. And the portrayal was good. It was quite good, but unfortunately, that character also just doesn't transition well to the screen. Much of the dialogue is delivered with quite a subtle cadence in the graphic novel, whereas in the film, it's delivered in quite a campy manner that sort of doesn't fit quite well with how the film is meant to be portrayed. And Rorschach, he has that instability, sure, but can you talk about instability without talking about Heath Ledger's Joker? Like that chaos, that energy, that passion that he brings to the role is absurd. He does so many just tiny little nuances. He does his own makeup for the film because he thought that's how the Joker would do it. He was just utterly compelling. Whereas as Rorschach, yeah, okay, he was good. Like he was probably one of the better parts of that film, but it wasn't iconic.
We are talking about the best comic book character portrayal here, which means we do need to go into how accurate they are to their comic book counterparts. And honestly, we've had other Jokers that have had more accurate portrayals of that character. We've seen multiple different portrayals of that character played out, and we can all pick and decide on which one we want. But personally, for me, if you're looking at a Rorschach portrayal, you've only got one, which makes it very difficult to make that argument against you there. Rorschach, for me, is a fantastically played character. You say there's campy dialogue in some of these scenes and stuff like that. The campy dialogue doesn't belong to Rorschach. You have to remember that. He's a character who is consistent throughout the film and grounded within his own character. And he dives so deep into that. You see him have those slow little moments of him kind of not breaking character, but that moment of, I know that I'm paranoid. I know that people call me insane. And you can believe that from his performance. With Heath Ledger, it is all insanity. It's all out all the time. But can he have that subtle switch of character? Can he have that range?
Rebuttal?
Yeah, so you talk about the fact that obviously there's lots of different portrayals of the Joker, and that's exactly the point, that there isn't really a definitive Joker, like in the comic books, so it's hard to do a definitive portrayal of that character. There is a definitive Rorschach, so there has to be a definitive portrayal of him. I don't think it necessarily is the definitive portrayal of him. I think it's definitely, dialogue is definitely campy. Some of the way he reads some of his like noir-esque dialogue is so edgy, like I feel like I'm going to cut myself listening to it. It is painful. Like, whereas Heath Ledger's Joker, every line is just delivered with such perfection, such tone.
The character is meant to be edgy. He is meant to be dark and brooding, and we have that a lot in characters in films nowadays, but Rorschach does stand out amongst the many kind of characters who did that portrayal. He also has those quiet moments. He also has those moments of action and stuff like that. He is able to do that kind of twist of his like demeanor and twist of his body language, and also the ability to change his acting style on the fly. Heath Ledger is outright insane the entire film, whereas Jackie Earle Haley has that ability to range.
I am gonna go first on this one because I don't want to be part of a tiebreaker if it gets to it. I am gonna give this one to Harry. I feel like he went into the specifics more of I thought it was like a good evolution of his first argument. He went more into sort of like the subtleties that Heath Ledger was able to bring in terms of his performance. And I didn't feel like your attack was strong enough. It felt like you just sort of all you had was just the Joker's just sort of insane all the way through. I'm like, well, that's kind of the Joker. That's sort of like the antithesis of the character. And also Harry's mention in that comment was brilliant. And that just I don't know. I thought that Harry just had the more well-rounded, focused, concise argument, whereas it felt like maybe it's a difficult opponent to go against. It felt like you're clutching at straws maybe a little bit for Heath Ledger. So I'm going to give it to Harry.
I am also going to give it to Harry. I'm basing that on kind of the argument of that you said Rorschach just had this one movie, and then saying that there's been lots of iterations of the Joker, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this interpretation of the Joker. And at that point, I think that becomes sort of a moot point for me, just because we're looking at one character from one film and one character did one other film as well. And for me, the argument of that, like you said, the portrayal of Rorschach to the character that he is and the way he played it and not wanting to cut himself was out there and great. But yeah, for me, the overall argument of it was just for me the just one movie thing kind of swayed it, and it went towards Harry's Joker.
It would have been a clean sweep for this Tate. I think Harry had you. It's hard because you're up against Heath Ledger's Joker.
Very hard to argue against that. It's also, I had nothing on the rebuttal there, so I kind of went off my last point that I made. It was like a very quick, actually, he doesn't actually change his character. And I was like, okay, do that on the rebuttal.
But yeah, Harry, you're through. You've still got another 2 fights in a row, so it's going to be an interesting one. But if we're moving on for a clean sweep, because let's be honest, Heath Ledger Joker is one of the juggernauts. We have Harry going up against a Joker this time. Harry has Deadpool, and he's going up against Mark Hamill's Joker.
This will be a good argument, I think, this one.
This is going to be very fun. If you need a couple of seconds to compose yourself, get some water, do let us know. We know how hard it is to do back-to-back.
It's cool.
But look, you are burnt on the clock as well, Harry. 1 minute for yourself up against Chris. This is going to be fun.
Whenever you're ready, Harry, you start.
I'm glad that it's Deadpool coming up against Mark Hamill's Joker, because we get to talk about the strength of voice acting, because a lot of Deadpool's portrayal is him in a mask. And although, yes, it's animated with CGI and stuff like that, it's still the majority of it is him in a mask. Yeah, obviously, Ryan Reynolds has a definite edge on Mark Hamill here because he brings so much physicality to the role of Deadpool. The acrobatics, the combat, the choreography is all fantastic. The little physical humor that you can't really get with voice acting is portrayal. But even just on a voice acting level, I'd say Ryan Reynolds more than holds his own against Mark Hamill. Like the tone that Deadpool does with some of his jokes, so the delivery, the timing is all impeccable. With Mark Hamill, like, it is all done wrong. It's all fantastic, but it's all animated around him. Like, he speaks and then they animate it. So yeah, the timing is going to be right because it has to be, because that's how they write it. That's how they draw it. Whereas Ryan Reynolds, he had to act against other people in such a unique fashion. He brings this, I keep saying it, but bring this energy, as well as bringing like some genuine emotion and nice moments.
To me, with Deadpool, with Ryan Reynolds' performance, it isn't all too dissimilar from the swathes of other comedies that Ryan Reynolds has done before and indeed after, especially before. In terms of the voice role and everything like that, and even the emotion in the film, it is all sort of very understated in the background. The main draw is the comedy and the violence and the action. That's what people want from Deadpool. And many of the jokes are sort of hit and miss. You do get some good ones, but then there are a lot of predictable ones, and even the delivery, the character outstays his welcome. He's always like a shot of adrenaline character. Less is more. And I feel like Ryan Reynolds does take that into it. You want to go into Mark Hamill, though, in terms of this legacy of performance. He has covered so many areas of this character through his many portrayals. He's played Joker in The Killing Joke. He's done the more sort of kiddie Lego games. He's done the animated series. He's done the video games, which is like the animated series on roids. He has gone through every single facet of the character that you can mine from the Joker, from the page, from the comic book. Any iteration that you've seen, he's already captured in one of his voice acting performances. And he can go from the
time.
I see what you're saying with the humor of Ryan Reynolds, but I strongly disagree that it's like a shot of adrenaline is a great way to describe it, because he absolutely is. You talk about how the fact that Ryan Reynolds he's like the same humor before and after this. Like, wow, that just goes to show how much he is like the character Deadpool, which is exactly what we're arguing about. Yeah, he is exactly like the character in that because he plays the same character. He plays Deadpool in all of his films because he is Deadpool. He is the perfect portrayal. There is no one else who could do it. Whereas we can see there are other people who can do Joker. Ryan Reynolds is so iconic.
I felt that Ryan Reynolds his portrayal of Deadpool in the Deadpool films was very much a do-over. He did get that second chance when the animated series rolled out, and also an actor of like Mark Hamill, we all know him from Star Wars and sort of very little else, to come out and deliver this powerhouse performance that is a legacy, a generational character now in terms of animation of that character. He's covered it all from 1992 and even still now. When people read the comic books, they hear that voice. That is the synonymous voice that they attach to the Joker. He covers it all, the subtleties, the maniacal laughing. He tells a story with his laughter. He can go from like a slight
time.
It's a close fight. Oh,
I'll quite happily go first if that's okay, guys. I thought the point that Harry brought up about the voice acting thing was a superb first argument to bring in, that this is very much a voiced performance that is behind that mask so often. The portrayal, you're right, of Ryan Reynolds in that character is so spot on. He is Deadpool, and it's very much like we had earlier with the Black Panther thing. Very different, but that he is that character. Then you threw Chris threw in the line that he went from Luke to Joker, and that we kind of know him only as Luke as a character. To have him then portray this evil character so well, with the way and the nuance he performs that character, that is what threw it for me to animated Joker.
Thank you. Okay, then there's a lot of silence going on right now. I'm going to talk just to fill time. Feel free to.
I'm not sure
what you want. Okay, sure. I'm going to rattle some out loud opinions, because Harry's point, and I absolutely despise Deadpool, which is a really important thing as well. When he brought in the animated character stuff, that to me was big, because I'd never looked at it in that way. And not only did he bring that in, he then made the point of he's doing this in real time with other actors, and they are animating around Mark Hamill's voice, which is true. And that stuck with me more than anything. I think it was a pretty even contest, but I'm going to edge it to Harry for that, which is a shame. And I'm making it a tiebreaker, but I was really looking forward to a Joker v. Joker. So, Tate, I'm afraid it's on you now.
Yeah. Really strong arguments either side here. And the rebuttals were equally as strong. I think it's probably one of the strongest fights we've had so far tonight, one of the most equal ones we've had. But something that's sticking out to me, and it's something that, as a person who only reads comic books every now and then, this does kind of stick out. And I haven't even seen much of the animated series. But when I look at a comic book and I see the Joker, I do imagine Mark Hamill's voice. And that is a generational thing. And I know that the arguments here were very, very close and stuff like that. But I think that last point of when you look at this portrayal and the impact it's had outside of the actual kind of screen and stuff like that, and the fact that now you hear that voice when you look at that comic book page, I don't think any other character on this list could even say they could do that. So I'm going to have to give this to Mark Hamill's Joker.
Well, that's going to be a very interesting fight next round. Oh, okay.
Right, so we have a semi-final lined up. However, Harry, are you ready to go again? I'm going to grab some water about it.
Let's do it.
Right, okay, so can you guys hear me still, yeah?
Yeah, in the distant back.
Perfect. I'm just topping up because we have J. Jonah Jameson versus Homelander.
Oh boy.
I'm terrified. It is myself against Harry. Harry, you will get a break after this. Do not worry, my friend. You will get a break to rest the voice. So, yeah.
George?
Homelander versus J. Jonah. I am.
Who's going first? Sorry, George. Okay, so
I am.
you have a minute clock. We'll start as soon as you start talking. So,
J. Jonah Jameson is perfect in every way in this role. Not only is himself, he becomes this character. He is that character. And I think what's hard to compare the boys with Spider-Man is that, you know, Spider-Man's even comic book wise, they've gone back decades, iterations, everything, video games, films, animated TV series, two types. And then the boys, we've had a brand new live action, incredible series adaptation of a very average set of comics that they have somehow turned into a masterpiece, and it is down to Homelander. However, my biggest fear of this is that because there's only been one season of that, I don't think Homelander has had the impact that the rest of others have. And it's not his fault. It's not anyone else's fault. But, you know, in 2 weeks' time, he could have an arc that just drops off quicker than Game of Thrones could. Because it's so new, that's so hard to bring into that performance, that portrayal, because we don't know how he's going to end up. And I think he will end up great. But unfortunately, right now, he's not there. J. Jonah Jameson, we've had 13 years since the Spider-Man trilogy finished. And every time we go back to those films, he is in that conversation piece. You have to put him up there with Tobey Maguire. You have to put him up there with
If we're going to start talking hypotheticals and that hypothetically Anthony Starr might eventually be bad at the role, then this argument is utterly pointless, because currently he's not bad in the role. Currently he's outstanding in the role. Everything he's done so far as Homelander is amazing. Like you say, he is the reason the show is so fantastic, because we finally get to see Superman not as evil, but as flawed. And I think that's a fantastic and really interesting character. It's another, like I said before, it's about elevating the source material to something new. If you try and go back and reading the Garth Ennis comics after watching The Boys like I did, you will be sorely disappointed. But if I went back and read the old Spider-Man comics after seeing J. Jonah Jameson, which I'd be like, oh, cool, it's the same. Like, it's not anything special. It's not anything different. It's very accurate to the comics, but it's not bringing it any new life. It's just more of the same. Whereas Anthony Starr's Homelander is new, it's interesting, it's fantastic, and it's so utterly compelling. Never has a more invulnerable character felt so vulnerable. It's stunning. Like, he can go from 1 to 100 really quick, and that's such a really hard thing to do as an actor to have.
1 to 100, you've got J. Jonah Jameson's laughing scene. That's 0 to 100 in like 3 seconds. Anyway, you're absolutely right. Hypothetical season 1. Let's talk season 1, because he's not the best thing in season 1. Carl Urban is. Carl Urban steals season 1. Homeland is one of the great things of season 1. I'd be arguing Butcher more so than this. And you mentioned again, it's harder to get the comics. I'm sorry, Spider-Man comics are good. There's a good history there. The Boys comics aren't great. It's easy to make something bad into something good because you're allowed to make changes. For this, they needed to adapt. They needed to make the interpretation perfect, and he perfected it to the point no one else could ever do this. Anti-Star is fantastic. It could be.
Stop bringing up the J. Jonah Jameson laughing thing. Yeah, it's a good meme, but that's not relevant, is it really? It's entertaining, but it's not necessarily a great portrayal. Anthony Starr's Homelander just has that it factor. I strongly agree. I strongly prefer him to Butcher's character, because I think he's such a more interesting character, because he has that range. He has that range of being this utterly broken, abused child, and then this all-powerful demigod. And he does both of them perfectly. These are two completely solitary, different characters that he nails every single time. J. Jonah Jameson is just J. Jonah Jameson. He has no range. He's just a character.
I'm gonna go first here. George, you said that Homelander carried the Boys, and then you changed your mind halfway through and said Billy the Butcher carried the Boys. I think Homelander won that by quite a fair bit. So I'm saying very true.
Sorry, Chris. I was just going to jump in. Sorry. My point was literally exactly what I wrote down as these were going through when George said Boys was amazing down to Homelander, and then again later on you said it was down to the character. So it kind of took that argument away, and for me, yeah, it was down to Harry. JJ, I'm really sorry.
You shot yourself in the foot, George.
I didn't shoot myself in the foot because Homelander's better.
Yeah.
For me, and obviously, like I haven't seen The Boys yet. I will get on that very soon, probably this week.
This might be good advertising for Chris. Like, if he eventually wins the bracket.
Honestly, like, I could sense like it was really hard for George, because like I know that he loves the boy and that character indeed. So a lot of your argument, it felt like you were being a hype man for Harry for a lot of it. And then you kind of just threw like a sentence or two at the end to try and bring it back to Jonah Jameson. But honestly, the focus was all on Homelander in that argument for me between both. So I'm going to give it to Harry on that one.
I can't contest that.
I mean, it saddens me to see that red stroke through his character, but it's...
you will see it very soon. I'd already edited it by the time one of the first point. But next up, Tate, we go again. We have Big Daddy versus Black Panther.
That's the British look to you, George, and I mean that very, very sincerely.
Okay.
Yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? It sucks when it's arguing against him.
George, this might be easy if you're actually talking about classic 80s wrestler Big Daddy, but it's okay. We'll get into this. It's going to be fine.
I will allow you, George. I will allow you to change your argument to that if you want.
Fine.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, George, start talking out. Whoever's going first now, we'll start the minute.
Okay. Right. I'm gonna. So, Nicolas Cage's Big Daddy. They are two exceptional performances, and I have to bring up, because it is important to bring up, Nicolas Cage is the mentor role. Look at the traditional sort of fairy tales of, he has the mentor role for the comics. He's there to mentor Kick-Ass. He's there to mentor Hit Girl. The point of his character is that he needs to die. He has to have that sacrifice. It is the build-up to that. The warehouse scene, you see him kicking ass at the first part of the film, the incredible editing that made him this tough guy. And how do you make a villain better? You let a villain kill off a character. And that's exactly what they did. They had him burning alive in front of his daughter. You want to talk about other moments. What makes this portrayal more is the music that comes with him, the music choices in all of his scenes. He has that. Then you can bring in the performance side, his Adam West imitation. The whole thing is a perfect parody of that. And it is essential for that. And Chadwick Boseman is bloody phenomenal. Unfortunately, in all of his films, he is overshadowed by somebody better than him. Nicolas Cage absolutely steals Kick-Ass from everyone else. That's one of the reasons Kick-Ass 2 was so awful, because he wasn't there to be in it. He didn't have that impact. You can look at Captain America Civil War.
I want to go ahead and say that Chadwick Boseman absolutely holds his own in this film. And I've said this before, he's up against some big heavyweight actors in the films that he is in. His introduction and kind of his growth throughout these films is just fantastic to see as an actor who's able to bring that kind of kingship and being thrust into that position of power, the ability to kind of not control, but like rule over, be a protector, be this superhero at the same time. Go against his own father's like previous legacy and stuff like that about opening up to the rest of the world. He is able to portray that perfectly. I want to talk again about his actual physical performance to go with it. Big Daddy does a physical performance. Chadwick Boseman does a physical performance here. But the accent, I mean, we all know that Nicolas Cage puts on an accent in this film, and it does come off very campy and very cheesy and stuff like that. But Chadwick Boseman doing the research going into it and putting the time and effort in to get that accent, to get that culture right. You had to get that culture right. You couldn't get it wrong. You could have had a bad Big Daddy instead of...
You're right, you could have had a Big Bad Daddy, but that's not mine. You mentioned accent. I'm sorry, my guy's imitating Adam West. It's a lot easier to do an African accent than it is to mimic perfectly the first ever Batman. That is true. You mentioned again performances. Let me give you Michael B. Jordan as Eric Killmonger. He absolutely steals that film. Everyone wanted Killmonger to stay alive because he's so much better. Bringing Letitia Wright as Shuri, there's a reason she's going to be taking over that role. She's perfect. Danny Guerrero as Okoye. Those three are all better in this film than Chadwick Boseman. They have better portrayals that leave overshadowed. You get to Wakanda in the later films, certainly in Infinity War, and you're excited for everyone, not just that single.
You're talking about mimicking a character here. You're mimicking Adam West. Other actors can mimic people, but you can't take a role and become the king, the leader of a franchise of your own. You can't do that. Hit Girl was fantastic in the film as well. Did you ever wonder about her performances? Aaron Taylor-Johnson was very good in his films as well. Are you going to wonder about those performances as well? You can't compare it on that same level. The legacy that is left here by Chadwick Boseman in Black Panther will live on long past the performance of Nick Cage in that film. The performances are nowhere near each other. One is fantastic.
That was hard.
Oh my word, this is closer than I ever thought it would get.
George, you need to stop arguing so well for Big Daddy, because if he wins,
I know. That's
Kick-Ass is in like my top 10, 15 of all time.
It's
I
a
think.
fantastic film, Kick-Ass.
It used to be. Kick-Ass 2 is shite, and that's bring that up.
I mean,
That was hard. To go up against Black Panther.
across like both arguments, there's a lot of sort of point scoring. It's like, well, you know, mine played it well. It's like, well, mine did an accent. It's like, well, mine did a voice. It's like, yeah, you're an actor. That's your job to do, you know, a convincing voice or whatever the character's required. So try to take that out of the equation a little bit with the arguments. Oh my God Almighty.
You don't know.
Do I give this to? I'm going to give this to Big Daddy. It was just I can't believe I'm doing this. It was the argument where you mentioned about being overshadowed in the film, and granted, you know, like there's been a lot of films with Chadwick Boseman in, as opposed to, like, as you mentioned, like 20 minutes of screen time or whatever with Big Daddy and Kick-Ass, but you know, like with those other films, like, you know, he is sort of caught in the minutiae of like the Civil War and everything, and Infinity War, indeed, like everything that goes on in that. And even in his main film, you know, even with the villain, I think there is much more to him. Like there is much more writing there. So in terms of the arguments, that rebuttal there was the one that stuck with me the most for Big Daddy. And oh my God, it's tough. I'm going to give it to George. Someone else can sort of take it to a tiebreaker if they want, but that's where my initial thoughts are at right now with that argument.
I'm going to give it to Tate because I think the arguments were very, very good on both sides. Far better than they had any right being, frankly. But the point that stood out to me was the point of the legacy, and I think that's really important. The fact that his performance was so captivating that it leaves a hole. Like, it leaves a massive hole in the franchise going forward, and I think that's important. And I think that you touched on that really well. So I'm going to give Tate the point as well.
Cheers.
Welcome.
Right, okay. I'll say this. Until Tate's final rebuttal, George, you absolutely had it. I'd stopped even writing stuff down. Like, I was quite happy that Big Daddy was going to take this from Black Panther. I thought your argument that it was an overshadowed character, and then you swiped off like the accent thing with the Adam West thing, and then Tate brought up legacy. And yes, you mentioned that he wasn't in Kick-Ass 2 because he died in that, and it made the film all the worse from not being there. You did miss him. The fact we are not going to have a Chadwick Boseman Black Panther feature in the MCU again, for me, that was a perfect argument for why I would give this to Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther.
That was a very close one.
Big Daddy has no right taking that far. I'm not going to lie.
He was up against a number 1 pick and a number 2 pick back to back, which is really, really difficult.
It's crazy that you had an argument as good as you had to keep him going.
Yeah.
That was like,
I kind of was unfazed. I won't lie. I know I lost, but I was unfazed at that one, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Anyway, while you guys chat, we have some semi-finals lined up, which I'm just going to upload in a couple of mementos. Has there any big upsets from that last round? I don't
think so. No,
I don't really know. Sort of evened itself out after the first round. It's
I feel like Jonas Jameson being taken out was a big deal. I
feel so as well.
I think it is, but it's against Homelander.
I'm going to take this time to go to the toilet and give us a break before we move into the semi-finals.
Okay.
That is absolutely fine. So I do have a quick graphic for those watching at home. So we have in the semi-finals Harry versus Chris with Joker versus Joker, which is actually incredible. Mm-hmm. And then Harry, you're going to be fighting again, my friend. You have Homelander up against Black Panther. That actually is a potential standout because I don't know how either of you are going to be able to argue that. Actually,
sweep the leg, Johnny. That's going to be the only way. That's going to be the only way.
Thinking on the back, I'm going to have to do 2 back to back. I'm also going to dash to the toilet. So be sure.
Okay,
absolutely fine. Dave, while we are waiting for people, out of curiosity, who would your 4 picks have been? You can include people that were already picked.
Okay, that's all right. So my 4 picks for the characters in this, I would have loved to have picked Heath Ledger's Joker. Would have probably been first and foremost in my head as a pick. I would have also gone with Batfleck as another one of my picks. I love, out of the awfulness that is that side of the movies that the DCEU that tried to portray, Batman was probably my least hated part of it. But I thought Affleck portrayed it really, really well. In terms of the characters, it's kind of a tough call. You're kind of stuck with inside of either the MCU, but who I really like in his performance. I love Chris Evans playing Johnny Storm. I thought at that time, when he was cast as that character, yes, he's Captain America now, and you can't see past that. But at the time when he was coming off a load of like romantic comedy films, and he was that's the portrayal he'd had, for him to come in and be Johnny Storm, I thought he was the perfect casting for that movie, although the film failed and didn't get that follow-on from it. I just thought his portrayal of that, he would have made my list.
That's fair. Yeah. No, he captured everything from the character, like that boisterous ladies' man kind of. Yeah. No, I can see that. It's been a while since I've seen those films. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to.
The reboot particularly sticks in my mind, not for good reasons, but awesome. Okay, are we ready for we're in the semis now?
Round 3, Harry semi-finals. Harry versus Chris. Harry with Heath Ledger's Joker against Mark Hamill's Joker. An argument that has gone on this channel for many years.
Yeah.
I've only just realised, George, you're out.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'm excited for the next.
This is new territory for you. I swear. Like, you're always in the semi-finals.
Not last time, or the time before. I don't think.
Oh yeah, because Chris took everything. But yeah.
I don't know.
Right, I'm excited for this. I'm excited to be watching this.
This is the most hyped up battle I reckon I could.
first.
Harry, you are up first on the clock. You have 1 minute. Heath Ledger's Joker against the Hand. Oh, I can't wait for this. Actually, I'm really excited. Right, Dave, when you're ready.
Whenever you're ready, Harry, start talking. The clock will start.
As it's been previously said, the idea of Mark Hamill versus Heath Ledger is one that's been toyed around for ages. And sadly, what I think it's going to have to come back to is this idea of live action versus animation. And Heath Ledger's mannerisms that he brings to the role, his physical acting, it does so much like showing without telling. The way the Joker moves, the way he laughs, the way he smiles, every little part of it just adds something to the performance. Whereas Mark Hamill is sadly hindered by the fact that he can't add that to the performance. He is based solely on the strength of his voice, which is a great asset, but it sadly isn't the whole picture. As I've said before, it is drawn around Mark Hamill. He will give his performance and then they'll give life to it. Whereas Heath Ledger, he did it all by himself, relatively speaking, obviously, but like it's all his performance, it's all his movements, it's all his physicality, it's all his expressions, it's all his tone, it's all everything about him is all him. And I think that just puts him that much higher above Mark Hamill's performance. I can't think of anything else to add to that.
Time.
There's a lot of stuff with Heath Ledger's Joker. There's the look, there's the makeup, and the look is more striking than the actual performance, in my opinion. When those first images came out and it was the grungy look, that was the thing that took people by storm the most, was that look. Obviously, like arguing live action or Mark Hamill wouldn't be good as like a live action Joker or whatever, that's just completely element. What we're talking about is the actual portrayal of that character. And having seen Mark Hamill deliver a Joker monologue in person, you don't need the stuff. You strip all that away. It's just one man and a microphone. And he had everyone on the edge of everyone was hanging on every single word. He embodied that character. He became that character as much as any live action adaptation of that character. He also shows that he has range with the character, which I don't think that Heath Ledger does. You have that, he does have that very grungy look to him, that terrorist, that sort of psychopath look, and all like the long, fanciful paragraphs he says where he's just spouting about philosophy and ethics and everything like that, which isn't interesting for the character of the Joker. There is so much more personality and charm to Heath Ledger, to Mark Hamill's character. Sorry.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't think that Mark Hamill would obviously make a good live-action Joker. That's not what I'm arguing. My point is the fact that Heath Ledger makes such a good live-action Joker that even Mark Hamill's performance as an animated Joker isn't good enough. I'm saying that Heath Ledger's the way he moves, to say the look is the most important thing. I think the performance is far better than the look. The way he moves is fantastic. His introduction scene where he walks into the room of gangsters and he's crawling around like a little gremlin is fantastic because it's so unsettling and you don't know why. There's just something about it every time he does anything. It's just so creepy and so simple.
With Heath Ledger, he just has that. He mastered that one tick for that portrayal of the character. It's the lip licking, it's the little twitches and everything like that. He nailed that for what it was. But to me, Mark Hamill was just all encompassing with the Joker. He could have very easily stuck to the portrayal that he did in the animated series, but he showed that he could bring it up a notch and make it more adult with the Arkham games. With the Killing Joke, one thing that he always wanted to adapt was that comic book, and he did it, and he nails everything. It's got the more mature side, the laugh. He can be maniacal, he can be terrifying, he can also be sort of whimsical and funny. God damn,
that was rough.
Just love Battle of the Brackets. It
was nothing like tearing down my favorite portrayals of characters.
No, that was a good fight. That was probably one of my favorite fights that I've done on this thing. And to get those two paired against each other as well, that was amazing.
This is the only bracket we could probably do that unless we have 16 Joker portrayals.
I think
we would at some point.
Yeah.
If I'm okay, I'll jump in and go first, just so I don't have to do a tiebreaker if it comes to it. So I think it was important, the argument of live action against animation that Harry brought up, and then it fully went into the portrayal of how Heath Ledger plays the character. To be honest, I can't see past the Harry to take this for me. And to be honest, one of the lines that kind of lost it for Chris was when he said that the range that Heath Ledger had with the character, that he was just this one note, and I just can't see that. What he's called crazy, and he stops in the beat and says, "I'm not," and just this look in his eye, and I can't take that. I can't go to the Mark Hamill character enough. And yes, it's a great portrayal, but I can't see past the argument that the way the character is shown in The Dark Knight is pretty much as perfect as it can be. And I think the argument as well for that was how that Joker will take it. Unanimated.
Tate? If you're not ready, I am.
I think I'm ready. I think I'm getting there, but I'll have to voice it out because the arguments here were very good. Chris talking about how like you can just sit down in the room, you can calm the entire room, everyone sat on the edge of their seats, and everything like that. That is the kind of thing that like you can hear with the Mark Hamill Joker voice and stuff like that. When it comes to the actual portrayal of the character, and I think it was the point about the tics, the different things that keep like Heath Ledger's Joker moving, the different kind of mannerisms, the fact that when he walks into the room of all the gangsters, he's very slimy when he walks in with that slow kind of walk and crawl and stuff like that. Everything that goes into that. And it's very sad that like a comic book, a animated portrayal can't have those kind of things to go with it on the argument. But honestly, that is what sealed it for me in the end to go to Heath Ledger. And I'm sending Heath Ledger through to the final.
Okay.
I would have been similar. And I actually think, Chris, ever so slightly, you helped because you mentioned like about the manner. I know Harry said, but you also mentioned the mannerisms, and you mentioned some of the joke things. Like if you can, not have the mouth thing, everything. And I was like, he's really not helping. And on off point, this doesn't have anything to do with it, but unfortunately, we'll never get to see Heath Ledger go take to a microphone and do the Joker voice because when you said that, it's incredible. We get Hamill. But if there was a chance in life to listen to Heath Ledger's Joker voice in person, that would trump any other Joker to me. So that's me as a fan saying something. But I think Harry had the stronger argument overall. But even Harry seemed a bit intimidated in the build-up to that. I have to say that. I thought you were very calm. You're very calm, and I think that's when you can tell it's a bit more painful. However, if you've gathered your voice, you have to prepare for at least 2 more fights now because the next semi-final is Harry and Homelander versus Tate and Black Panther, which is potentially one of the biggest.
Yeah.
I'm not envious for this one. This is a hard one. Harry, you're going to be at first. Now, you know what to do. I don't even know what you're going to do.
Whenever you start, Harry, the clock will start.
Okay. I think the sad thing about Chadwick Boseman is that with each performance, I think his performance actually grew weaker, or at least less interesting. I think his introduction in Civil War was astounding. I think he had a fantastic character arc, fantastic mannerisms, and he, in a very short period of time, established himself as an important figure in already a very complex story with a lot of major characters, and he managed to carve out that niche, which I think is really impressive. However, in Black Panther, as it's been mentioned a bunch of times, he was overshadowed. In Infinity War, he was overshadowed. He just became a plot point as opposed to a character, and I think that's due to a very slow, boring portrayal of it, as opposed to Homelander, who I genuinely didn't know at any point during the series what he was going to do next, because Anthony Starr was just that unpredictable, because he had that range to go from 0 to 100 like that. He had that ability to be this politician, this orator, and also be this utterly brutal person, punching through people, lasering them in half. Like, he had this absurd range that just kept it so unpredictable, whereas Chadwick Boseman just eventually became very one-note and ultimately sort of let himself down.
It's very difficult to argue off that point based on what you've said about him being very one-note, because I believe that he was a very complex character that he was brought to the screen in, being the prince to start off with, and then being thrust into that kingship role, having to maintain his relationships as his friends, having to work out the kind of succession to the throne, having to fight for what he believes in, everything like that comes with a hero and a king. I've talked about that in other rounds. I have a problem with Homelander. My problem is that his role is stand around, wear a jacked up kind of suit, because that isn't his actual muscles. That is just him, like, without any muscle on a little bit, but he's wearing a muscle suit. And he's up against a person who was physical for his role. He was up against a person who did the action sequences. He was up against a person who brought that physicality and brought that action, and also brought other things as well. Little nuances like the accent and like the other things that you need to be Black Panther, the king, which he shows in all of his films, no matter how cameo.
I strongly disagree about your point that the physicality wasn't there in Homelander, in the sense that, it wasn't there in the sense he wasn't doing these crazy choreographed action sequences, but he didn't have to, because he was so imposing that just by standing there, he was already more intimidating than somebody doing all these crazy flips, which is a strength of the character, because the portrayal of Homelander in the comics also isn't a character that does loads of flips. So why would they change that in the TV series? And the same with Black Panther. Yeah, he had this whole nuance, but not really. The reluctant king is something we've seen a million times over, and it was done no more better here than anywhere else. And it was only the
The Reluctant King has been done elsewhere, yeah, sure. But The Reluctant King, I don't think was done as good as Chadwick Boseman put it to the role. Like, the fact that people were flooding to his performance, were flooding to the films that he was in, he became a main draw. He was the first person out of the portals in Endgame. That was his influence. If he wasn't as good of a character or wasn't as good an actor, they wouldn't have made him that person first out. It's because of his impact, the culture that he brought forward with the film, the representation that he brought forward with the film, that he was able to elevate this character to a whole new level.
I need to bring something up. It's not my argument point. However, Black Panther also had a muscle suit.
I was going to bring
But that wasn't part of Harry's argument.
No, but it means that you can't say
That's
it just dissolves that point. However, I've not decided on my argument yet.
I also want to say, wasn't Falcon the first one out of the portal at the end of Endgame?
On your left.
Yeah.
He's the first one out, but we don't see it. He's the first one to communicate and talk with him. Is anyone ready? Because I need to take them into account.
I'm ready. I genuinely think that Harry nailed it on that one in almost every respect. I think that every rebuttal he had was strong. It was a very, very compelling argument. Obviously, both are fantastic in their own right, but just to me, the fact that he went back to the comic book as well and said that, you know, he doesn't have to do all of these amazing action scenes, whatever. He can just be, just from a performance, even probably by not even saying anything, he's able to get that across. The Reluctant King thing I thought was a very good point as well, that it is a story that we have seen a million times, and maybe we haven't seen a role like this in terms of Homelander's character before this point. So that was one that stood out to me. And then some of Tate's arguments, like the muscle suit, kind of lost me, because I did also think that, and you know, even like physicality stuff, both have stunt people. You know, there was a stunt man working as Black Panther in the Black Panther films. It wasn't all Chadwick Boseman doing the physicality stuff. So I think that Harry, for me, had the better argument. And in terms of the arguments that Tate threw, I thought some of them you could pick apart a bit, or maybe some of them were slightly inaccurate.
I went the same way and gave this to Harry over Tate. And it's a lot of what Chris has just kind of covered on there. The Reluctant King was a big thing for me, but the range and physicality, I think, was a big part of it as well. The range, especially for Homelander, and just even if that first season that we're basing it on, I think Boseman had a lot more to do. And had he got through to Black Panther 2, I think would have seen a very different movie and a very, very different take on the character. But unfortunately, we didn't get there. So I think for that kind of argument, the range and the physicality was the big part for me that gave it to Homelander.
I would probably have to go with Homelander as well, just as a stronger argument, but those two dissolved points that I had to bring up kind of pushed it that a little bit higher. However, you thought well, but Harry, basically what happens next, because I'm going to use this. So you've got both picks in the final, as you can see on screen. You got Homelander and Joker, so you've won today regardless. However, you don't get to pick. You don't get to pick, because we still need to do a final. You get to choose someone to argue for one of your picks. So someone can do Joker or someone can do Homelander, but you will obviously pick which one you want to do and get someone else to do the other. So that's kind of what happens next. So you've won. We update the leaderboards. However, as we said before, you absolutely annihilated the last one, the first one you went on, and tonight you have shown again how and why. So yeah, a clean sweep on Black Panther as well, which is quite frightening because I thought that could have been in the final.
It's very difficult to argue against Homelander, I'm not going to lie.
I know, he's a phenomenal character. However, is he the most phenomenal character portrayal? Because someone's got to argue for Heath Ledger's Joker and someone's got to argue for Anti-Styles Homelander. So who are you picking for what?
I'm probably going to go with Homelander because I feel like I have more to say about him still, whereas I feel like I've exhausted every possible point I can think of for Heath Ledger. So I'll go for Homelander.
You have to pick someone.
Who do you want to fight for Heath?
Don't pick me.
Would anybody like to go?
I would have taken Homelander if you're offering it, but George wants.
I've argued enough for Jokers today to last me a lifetime. So
I've been screaming for something you've not said about Heath Ledger's Joker actually internally. Right. So if you want to do this, I can at least give it a go.
Definitely just go for it.
A minute and a half. It's a minute and a half, isn't it? All right, this is gonna be fun actually. So I love both these characters.
Okay, so if we're going, who's going up first on this?
So for the final, it's 1:30 for main argument, and it's a full minute if you need it for rebuttal, I believe.
Heath Ledger up first, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, George, then you get a minute and a half to talk about the Joker. Take it away, sir.
What makes Heath Ledger's Joker so perfect, so different from almost anything else ever made of a comic book series, is his recognition that comes after, how strong that performance is and the legacy it leaves behind. Heath Ledger was the first, one of two actors to ever win an Oscar for playing a comic book character. And obviously the other guy was another Joker recently. However, and that's one thing, hey, yeah, he can't be up there, he can be for Emmys. Homelander didn't get nominated for an Emmy. He's had that impact, but he has not had that recognition that Joker has, which to me is a very big thing in terms of a portrayal. And then we're going to bring the comics into it, because this Joker is not like any other comics Joker. You know, when you look at the Batman trilogy as such, you know, Nolan's so clear, like Nightfall for Bane, Long Halloween for Batman Begins. He picked all these iconic comics, and there was a couple of hints here there about the Joker, some stories he went for, but there was nothing so exact. It was a brand new iteration on this character which hadn't been done. He was so different. He had to completely make it his own, to the point he was slaughtered when he was cast in this role. Everyone's saying, the guy from Brokeback Mountain, the guy from 10 Things I Hate About You, dreadful, rubbish. The same things the DC fans always say. And yet here we are, 12 years later, again, talking about how phenomenal he is. The fact that he'd won the Oscar and he still gets compared to the other Joker Oscar winner. There's a really big thing to take into this. And it's about what he can do in such a short space of time. Those scenes, Homelander has phenomenal scenes, especially the plane scene. Maybe my favorite scene of season 1 of the entire thing. And he is outstanding in that. But I just don't think he has those individual moments within the series to put him on a landslide standstill to this. The pencil trick, the bank robbery scene, short film.
I think you raised some good points there about recognition, and I think I'd be amiss if I didn't point out the idea that award shows aren't necessarily the best metric to measure talent by. They are intensely political. The campaigns are far more important than the actual performances. So regardless of whether or not Homelander won any awards, the fact that Heath Ledger did doesn't necessarily put him at a higher standard. Also, you talk about legacy, and yeah, I think that's really important. I think obviously Heath Ledger's Joker does have a legacy, a fantastic one. However, Homelander has been around for a year, and he was so utterly compelling that people were crying out for season 2 the day that season 1 aired, because you just had to see more. And that is the legacy that he has at the moment, because obviously his story's not finished. He's still telling his story. You talk about individual moments that Homelander has. I mean, there are so many little moments that he has that are just utterly perfect. One thing that always stands out to me was when he puts his head on his handler's lap and just lies there, because it's just such a vulnerable moment. This such an openness from such a character that is just so abhorrent, and you feel so bad for them because you're human. And I don't think Heath Ledger has that humanity. He is this force of nature, which is a strength in some aspects, but is also such a huge negative, because you don't have that element of who he is beyond the Joker. He is chaos, but Homelander is God, essentially. They even mention the thing, he's like Jesus, except he's not. He's vulnerable, he's human. He doesn't have kryptonite like anyone else, like a Superman. He has his own internal failing.
George, 1 minute rebuttal.
And that's a good thing you mentioned, is little things. And as we mentioned before, sort of, and the unpredictability of both these characters, because they are titans in their own respect. I think Heath Ledger's Joker is far more unpredictable than Homelander. I think when you get to that final scene in season 1, you know exactly what Homelander's going to do. Maybe the plane scene, maybe a couple of kills here and there. But I think Homelander's reached this point where we now know what he's going to do, because his unpredictability has become predictable. Whereas I think when you get Heath Ledger's Joker, we didn't expect the bombs on the boat. We didn't expect what he was going to do. The throw of the edge. We thought he'd die. He didn't. And I don't think you can see what Joker's going to do next. That was always his goal. The breaking out of the prison scene is still to this day not some. Nowadays we know it's going to happen, because every film that did it straight after, because of how important this one was. And I think when you look back and see this Heath Ledger, there's so many different versions to compare it to. I think he has to stand out. And if we're arguing the best comic book sort of portrayal of all time, I think you do need to bring awards into it, because they are important. They are very political, don't get me wrong, but they are still a testimony. They are the most elitist
time.
I think.
I see what you're saying about the unpredictability, and I'd have to agree that Heath Ledger is probably more unpredictable than Homelander, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a better portrayal. One of the strengths of Homelander is he starts out as this unpredictable, completely such an obscured character that has such unclear motivations, and then as you get to know more about him, as his performance goes on, he gets more nuanced. You learn about him, you learn about what makes him tick, and so by the end, the fact that you can predict what he's going to do just shows that this writing and this portrayal has earned it, because he has been able to convey to you exactly what sort of person he is and what he wants. Whereas Heath Ledger's portrayal, it was important at the time, but things have moved on since then. And I don't get me wrong, like, originality is key, but so is Homelander is such an original character. I'm aware it's very much a satirization of Superman, but it's never been done to this extent, never to this fantastic, magnanimous spectacle that it is in The Boys. It is just utterly compelling in the way that Heath Ledger's Joker doesn't stack up to, because it's so unpredictable, because you can't understand what he thinks, you can't relate, whereas Homelander...
Oh, that was a fantastic end. Yeah, that was a very, very good fight to end on.
I want to go first because I feel like this is going to be a tiebreaker. There's one argument which won me over. It was a strong point. It was the point that stood out to me in the opening arguments the most. And then just at the end, it was touched on again by Harry, that he is a relatable superhero in the fact that he does have those human qualities. He does have those human moments. And Anthony Starr is able to portray those as well as portraying the demigod. Like, he is able to do that. He has that range. And when he was talking about comparing the chaos of the two characters, I get what George was saying about Anthony Starr becoming, his unpredictability becomes predictable, but you could say exactly the same about the Joker. So I feel like I'm going to have to give this to Harry and to Homelander.
I'm going to jump in next because...
Oh, you absolute swine.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm sorry. And I'm not doing this for like...
Just because it's your channel.
Not at all. Not at all. It was actually that line that Tate just mentioned, which is the thing that would... It's true. It's true. Where was I going? The line that Tate mentioned a second ago, it was becoming predictable in the unpredictability. Now, of course, as I mentioned, I haven't seen The Boys, so it is I am just going completely unbiased into this argument. And it was actually great to hear more about Homelander's character before I do watch it, that I didn't realize it did go into you mentioned his childhood, I think, and the haunting quality of the character, which sounds really interesting. But it's chalk and cheese, really. It's, do you prefer a character that has a lot of backstory so we get to know them, or is there more intrigue, especially in a villain, that we don't know all there is to know about him and where he came from and everything? So it was that predictability in the unpredictable, or whatever it was, whatever the great line was that you said, that was the thing that I latched onto the most with that argument. But that was so tough. I thought that was a very well fought fight across the board. It was just that line that stuck out to me the most. And I think that I was trying to put myself in the mind space of The Dark Knight as, would it be a better film if you know all the tragic sort of like Joaquin Phoenix backstory of a Joker character in that film? And I don't necessarily think it would. Sorry, Dave.
Anyway, that's okay. To be honest,
Harry wins regardless. Guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it to Harry because he won it anyway. But I am giving this one to George and the Joker character as well. The arguments were fantastic. I mean, they've been amazing. Harry has held this character so well and such a high esteem throughout the argument. It's been amazing. Mm-hmm. But I just thought George's first talk of the awards, I thought what was really important. I thought was a really good point, that he'd been the recognition of the character portrayal kind of is what we're talking about. And like George said, yeah, and Harry brought up as well that there was politicized behind awards, but I don't think it kind of matters. And one of the lines that kind of sold it for me on George was when Harry said that the people had moved on from that performance, but I don't believe they have. Even when Phoenix did such a good job, the only thing people were asking was, will he be as good a representation of that character as Heath Ledger was? And so for that, to be honest, it was only that point that kind of then lost it for Harry to move to George for that one bit where that the character had moved on, where I don't believe it still has. I think the next time there's a Joker character in there, I think, again, most of the talk would be, is he going to be as good as Ledger's Joker and not as good as Joaquin Phoenix's Joker?
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have our winner.
Fair. I mean, I'll be honest.
Up there, boom. I'm happy with that. I'm completely.
I think tonight completely put forward is maybe, we say this a lot of the times, I think tonight was probably the best battle of the brackets we've done.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of
every argument was high quality.
Yeah. Every argument was high quality. Every time you're taking someone out, that's a character you like as well, bar Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, but George, it still lost 2-1. There was a vote going against it. Even still.
But tonight was one of the strongest dominant performances, and Harry, on his second match in, gets his first win.
He's on
You're
the board.
always close to
On the
right.
board
You're on
now.
the board. You're on the board. There will be a scoreboard updated for next time. And as we said, we predicted this would probably happen. And what makes it more crazy is if he goes to the winner's profile, that was your fourth choice pick as well.
Yeah,
And
there was a lot of fourth choices dangling around for a lot of people.
And you can see why, because there's so many great characters everywhere else.
I want to say his fourth pick. That was the final pick of the bracket as well. That was the last. He had the fourth pick.
Spider-Man
fourth round
was.
pick, wasn't it? Was it Spider-Man? Oh, okay, it was the second to last
Spider-Man
one.
or Commissioner Gordon. So it was
Yeah.
Gary Oldman.
But if you pull up the bracket again, I do want to give testament here to Homelander, who absolutely tore up this bracket. And I'll be honest, I did say in my predictions that Homelander would be a dark horse and it would probably come through quite well. We all know the performances of Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. It's always on top of people's lists of best character, like comic book characters of all time and stuff like that. But to see Anthony Starr get that high up on Homelander and stuff like that, it's a testament to how good The Boys actually is, and I can't wait to finish off the season.
And the thing is,
Say-
oh, go on. In terms of like comic book portrayals, there are many comic book characters out there that we didn't get on this bracket. We had many runners up. We could easily get another bracket out of this if we wanted to do more best comic book character portrayals, if you can even say that. If there's one alongside the best, but yeah, there's room to do another one of these. Probably won't be our next one. We like to keep it fresh. I think we need to do a different one next time. But
I mean, to be honest, we could do an entirely new bracket with the same name and still get 16 solid picks.
Yeah, easily.
So
this is the part where we say we are sponsored by Amazon and Anthony Starr. Thank you for watching, and the whole thing was
he walks on doing the Homelander clap, just the American apple pie flag waving in the background.
And there is a.
Sorry.
Were you about to say the delete thing?
No, I was going to say, if there's one thing we can take from this whole Battle of the Brackets thing is that, Chris, you need to watch The Boys.
Yeah,
I really do.
It's a fair point.
Next Battle of the Brackets, I will be arguing for a different character from The Boys. I will get both of them watched.
Best boys character excluding Homeland. I'm joking. We're not going to do
no.
But no, that is everything I kind of have tonight to say. I don't know if I'm missing anything else. There will be a review of The Boys Season 2 when it has finished airing.
Yes.
So fans of The Boys will be able to get into that. That will be good fun because it is a phenomenal show.
There will also be coming up very soon. I don't know. We haven't done an announcement video of it yet, but the London Film Festival is going to be starting. Is it later on next week or is it the week after?
First week of October.
It is a week on Wednesday.
A week on Wednesday.
So it's at home this year. So we've all got our press passes. We'll be covering it. The schedules are coming up, so we will have most of it covered. The only thing at the moment no one's sure about is Soul, which is quite devastating because that's like the one that
we all wanted to see.
So we're going to be covering that in October. As we also know, a lot of films have been postponed. Pretty much all of them now, except Bond, has been postponed. So there's a lot of Netflix films to come out. But in terms of new content, we want to do another Battle of the Brackets. We always do. And as usual, we'll say now we haven't decided the next one, but there will be probably a conversation that takes place in 5 minutes' time where we will
Yes.
Can it be please best Sherlock Holmes interpretation? And I'd like Enola Holmes as mine.
We enjoyed the film though. Go watch our review of Enola Holmes, seeing as we still got this thing. Oh, it's changed. Oh, what a shame.
If we're doing that, I will probably go Basil the Great Mouse Detective from Disney if we're doing that, if we're going down that rabbit hole.
Nice.
Just for everyone at home, please comment below now what your favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptation is. Also, please comment what your thoughts on Battle of the Brackets were for today. Don't forget to like, comment, share the video, and subscribe. We are getting close to that 2K goal that we want by the end of the year. We're running out of time, but if with your support, with you guys sharing the channel off to loads of people and everything like that, we can get there by then. Follow us on Facebook for any updates on any of the videos that are coming out. Follow us on Twitter as well at cinema_savvy, and go pick up a t-shirt from TeePublic. We've got a brand new Cinema Savvy logo that we're going with, which I want to give a round of applause to George for doing that because it looks absolutely excellent. And hopefully we'll get that on a t-shirt soon enough.
And
yeah.
Go on, sorry, George.
I say I need to update TeePublic for that, folks. But if you haven't seen it, there's a pretty neat Twitter video which I did when I was bored at work, which I hope no one's watching from work. So check that out.
The rebrand is coming, and I want to say a big thank you to everyone that commented along. Carl being an absolute trooper. We had Holly right on there as well. And a big thank you to Harry and Dave for giving us your time tonight, jumping on, being really good sports tonight. Yeah, we look forward to the next one. This is one of our favorite things to do on the channel. It's always good fun, and we will definitely having you back. Harry, you are on the board now. It's all to play for. So I think we've said everything. As I mentioned, Dave, the link to your channel is in the description down below. But if you want to just end on sort of talking about your channel, and then we'll round off after that. Yeah,
thank you very much. Yeah, if you want to come and watch somebody build models really badly, head over to my channel, The Life of Brian. You can find that on YouTube, also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's all over just The Life of Brian official. So yeah, model builder of cars and geeky toys and reviews and Lego and things like that. So yeah, if that's your thing, Life of Brian is the place to come over. Kind of.
Awesome. So big thank you to everyone, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Take care, everyone.